Hi everyone, this is Anthony O'Flynn coming to you from the People's Republic of Australia. Trust that everyone's enjoying the show. It's certainly getting quite exciting, isn't it? Full moon in Pisces this morning, which perhaps reflects some of the volatile behaviour, at least because of the moon, not the sign, occurring in Melbourne, which I'll get to. But this is a energetic update and forecast for the spring equinox here in Australia, and obviously the autumn equinox in the Northern Hemisphere. Equi, Latin for equal, and nox, night, basically referring to the equal time between the sun and the moon, the daylight and the dark at this time, at this cardinal moment when the sun moves into the cardinal air sign of Libra. So this is a forecast that's based on rational, coherent thought combined with intuition. I've got a lot to say actually. So much is happening at the moment. It's quite an ongoing situation that is developing here in Australia, and I'll probably end up covering a lot of the topics and themes that are extremely relevant for this period we're going through in other videos. Simply because I just don't have time at the moment. I'm having a lot of other projects that I'm working on, and some of them are pretty massive. First thing I wanted to tell everyone is that the Paradigm Shift Summit for this year has been postponed until next year. That's definitely going to be postponed. And that's not just because of the ongoing tyranny. There are a combination of factors involved with that decision. It was a difficult decision to make, but I do believe it was the right one. I felt called to run the event last year, even with all the chaos and the uncertainty and the restrictions and the various forms of tyranny. But this year, I don't feel called to run it for a number of reasons. And I'm a really big believer in only fighting battles that you can win. And having run events, workshops, retreats, classes, courses, all sorts of things for, I think around over 16 years now. I have actually at times tried to take courses of action that weren't the right course of action at the time. So I've learned from experience of when to push on, and also when to conserve energy and wait for a better opportunity to run an event such as Paradigm Shift Summit, because it is such a big event. So it isn't gone forever, but it's just basically been postponed till next year. And I will obviously be giving an announcement when we will have the event, when I feel the conditions have improved, which in some ways, some of the conditions, as I see it, are definitely going to worsen, at least in Australia. So this energetic forecast will focus a lot on what's happening in Australia, simply because in many ways we are in the eye of the storm here in Australia. And for a long time, for many years, even decades, I've watched various events unfold overseas, and it's always been in other countries where I've seen the turmoil, the oppression, the tyranny, the insanity. And although we haven't been completely removed from it here, definitely now we've suddenly become the focal point, at least internationally, and we're making international headlines for all the wrong reasons here in Australia. I see it as an opportunity, and in some ways, although there is a lot of suffering going on, the crisis is exactly what we do need in this country to jolt us out of this slumber and this apathy, and start to perceive reality much clearer, with a much clearer vision. And we can see now this is really starting to occur, and there's no turning back for the Australian people now. And I wanted to begin this update by honouring all the people who are out there sharing the message, for speaking up, for speaking the truth, for taking a stand, and for taking the course of action that they know is right in their heart to oppose this evil. Because ultimately this is a battle between good and evil. And unfortunately, because we live in this inverted reality, many people, through their own ignorance, stupidity and unconsciousness, basically actually perceive evil as good, which not only is that a reflection of them, it's also a reflection of the exceptional skills that the dark forces have in camouflaging their satanic agenda which we see unfolding day by day in this country. And if you're unsure about that, you only have to look at the events in Melbourne where a woman in her 70s was forcefully pushed onto the asphalt, onto the road by a police officer, and while she was on her back was then pepper sprayed, about a metre away from her face. It's pretty shocking to see that actually occurring here in Australia, and I know a lot of people around the country were totally outraged about that. And that is not the action of a sane human being, and that is definitely not an action of a policeman who is there to protect and serve the public, and is very disappointing. And I should also point out that that is not all police, and definitely as far as I know, the experience we have here in Queensland is the police have been very respectful and very honourable in their conduct so far. So maybe the police in Melbourne could learn a few policing methods from the police in Queensland, because there isn't trouble generally in any of the events or protests in Queensland, and it's very peaceful. And as far as I know, it's a completely different contrast to what's going on in Melbourne. But so I wanted to honour all those people who are involved in whatever way. And as I said at my presentations last year, including Paradigm Shift last year, I did actually expect another wave of awakening to occur. And that's definitely already happened here in Australia. And the awakening is intensifying because of the restrictions, the tyranny, the total insanity by these sociopathic politicians. And not all politicians, but basically the ones that are doing these kind of completely insane policies and border closures, and yet letting in football players and all the other insane things that we've seen. You know that this is not about a virus. It's quite obvious at this point it's not about a virus. And we are basically witnessing a socialist takeover here in Australia. And the real issue is that the way the power structure is formed is that they want us to project our frustration and call out the actions of the politicians, the premiers, the so-called leaders. But the reality is they're just pawns, and they're completely expendable. They're completely replaceable. In fact, that's part of the art of their deception, is to actually want you to focus on these lower level players, because then when they are removed, people think that everything's going to be better, everything is going to change, everything's going to change for the better. So this is exactly part of the game, whereas the same agenda goes forward with a different face. And even in Canada today, there's the election in Canada, and it's expected that Trudeau will actually get voted back in with a minority government, but we'll have to see the results of that as it comes in. But it's definitely going to be quite close, that's for certain. So the other thing I wanted to say is that a lot of people have been asking me about my book. My book titled Paradigm Shift. Yes, it is about to be published. It is actually with the people who are formatting the book now, and I am just waiting for all the documents to come back to me. So it will be published in about 1 to 2 weeks. And I apologise sincerely for the delays, but a lot of the delays have been because of my other projects that I've been working on. And it really will. It'll be ready in 1 to 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that. I'll put some details on social media about that when it's ready. So really, in regard to what's happening in Australia, I really wanted to make this point. It's one of the key points I'm going to make for the entire video, is that people are really questioning what's happening with this tyranny, this oppression, these completely unlawful abuse of human rights that's occurring in Australia. Well, that's an effect, and the cause, or at least partly, is because of the refusal of the Australian people to take up what I'll refer to as the magic potion, which is the medication that everyone's talking about. That is the popular topic daily in the fake news. So what do I mean by that? Well, people are only looking at this issue from a certain perspective, from a certain level of understanding. And when we actually examine the statistics of what's actually occurring and you compare what is happening in Australia to what has occurred around the world, you'll actually see a very different story. Because when people around the world and the international media are referring to what is occurring in Australia, obviously in this complete attempted coup, attempted dictatorship, is that it's only looked at from the point of view of what the government is doing, the state government, the federal government. It's not looked at from the point of view of what the Australian people are doing. And anyone who has written off the Australian people as being completely bending the knee and conforming to this insanity, you've got it completely wrong. The agenda that it's being rolled out in Australia is 100% going to fail. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that the attempt to introduce this socialist, communist, tyrannical, oppressive regime here in Australia, it will not succeed. In fact, in many ways it can be argued that it is already starting to fail. The cracks in the official story around the so-called pandemic is dissipating day by day, basically. It's basically being rejected by more and more people. And the more insane policies that the government come up with, the more people are actually rejecting it, and the more people are starting to question the official story. And that's reflected in the take-up of the magic potion. Now, from the data from the website Our World in Data, which has a lot of very sophisticated statistics, very detailed forms of analysis of many different topics, but particularly in regard to the so-called pandemic. The information that I'll read to you was current on 18th of September, so just a couple of days ago. Now, what is insignificant from this data is of the 38 current members of the OECD nations, Australia is the third lowest to have double magic potion, 2 doses of the magic potion. And this is where people are not looking to see why there is so much attempt by the government to coerce people into taking this medication, is because the people are not doing it here in Australia. Now, at the moment, these statistics reveal, and we can compare this to the other nations. So whatever, I know statistics can be pretty rubbery, but at least on this website, on this data, we can see that 36% of Australians have had the 2 doses of the magic potion. So that's the third lowest in OECD. Second lowest is New Zealand, actually, with 31.97% 2 doses of the magic potion. And the lowest is Mexico, with 31% of 2 doses of the magic potion. Now, perhaps you're thinking that that's not such a big deal because the rollout here, the coercion is still going extreme. Well, they're talking about easing restrictions just next month with 70% of Australians with 2 doses of the magic potion. Now, I know that's taking into account the fact that the under 16 age group is not counted in those figures. But my point here is that when you compare the other countries in the OECD, such as Denmark at 74%, and Spain at 76%, and even the UK at 65%, and the USA at 53%, well, we're nowhere near that. And that's even if you take these statistics to be actually accurate, which is very difficult really to say, isn't it? And particularly with the fake news in Australia, with the politicians, I mean, there's no reason to believe the statistics that they're giving these politicians. They're pathological liars. So there's no reason to have any confidence what they're telling you is the truth. But their idea to get 70% vaccinated, fully 2 doses of the magic potion by next month, at best it's questionable. Let's see what story they come up with next month as the date gets closer. But as it goes here, obviously the New South Wales is the highest, Victoria is the second highest, and then at the lowest is actually equal Queensland and Western Australia. So this is significant because we see now that this socialist agenda. As I said in a video I made in July at Mission Beach, I used the analogy of a pond, of these concentric circles expanding in the pond, and that as the policies, as the tyranny, as the lockdown, as the economic devastation, all the social consequences, blocking the kids from riding BMX bikes on those tracks and everything that they do, the skate parks, that gradually more and more people will become engaged in the political process. So the attempts to create behaviour modification, to socially engineer the humans to comply with the government tyranny is actually having a backlash. And now this backlash is growing as the concentric circles basically affect more and more people. Now we can see now that the elite are now, with their plan to, that they are trying to coerce the people here in Australia, and of course this is happening internationally and globally, is now doomed to fail because they have tried to do it too quickly. This kind of rapid attempt to just inoculate, to socially engineer all the people to comply with this medication, with this medical mafia, is now having widespread ramifications. Now, I'm sure in their modelling they would have calculated for resistance for the various avenues, but now basically they're starting to have to fight a battle on numerous fronts, because now they're basically taken on the unions, as today we've seen in Melbourne. The CFMEU union, the scenes there today were extremely volatile. So that's the construction, forestry, mining and energy union, and they have over 100,000 construction workers as members. If you haven't seen some of the footage there, it shows the rage that's boiling in the Australian people. And some people are saying that it shouldn't have come to this. And it shouldn't have come to this because the sociopath politicians should be listening to what the Australian people keep telling them. And the only people who are believing what this pandemic and are still believing there's this killer pandemic are the people who watch the fake news and believe all the fake statistics with all the fake tests and all the fake propaganda and the lies upon lies upon lies. Australians all over the country are now awake to what is actually occurring. And even if the people haven't fully understood the ramifications of what's unfolding, there's definitely now a questioning of the official story, and you're going to see this radically intensify in 2022. We're only really at the beginning of this right now, and this is really going to intensify as more and more people start to come to terms with the fact that basically the government are just white-collar criminals. Not all the politicians, and perhaps not all the governments, but the prominent ones, the ones that are implementing this agenda, they basically should be tried and at least for gross negligence or abuse of office, because they are not definitely having a mandate to carry out these actions, and they are definitely not representing the will of the electorate. And more people are now starting to realise this, and this is going to have colossal ramifications for the Australian political arena, particularly next year, as there will be an election in May at the latest. It's unlikely that there will be a federal election this year, but there definitely will be one by May. In fact, I would argue that it would be better if it was actually in 2023, because then it would even give a greater number of people time to actually understand and adjust their viewpoints and belief systems around what's really occurring here in this country. And even so, given that the election is basically, next year at the latest, you're going to see a changing in the political landscape that's going to be quite colossal, and this is going to be the dramatic ascent of the UAP, the United Australia Party, led by Craig Kelly. Now that's going to be something that is going to be ongoing, and providing that they can appeal to a wider voter base, that they can generate support in the community for real change, and that they basically won't do any deals with either of the three parties, that's including the Greens, and break this coalition. This coalition is not the Liberal National Party. This coalition in Australian politics is the Labor Party and the Liberal National Party. They are the coalition, and it's time to end this coalition and even in time have parliamentary reform and get rid of this preferential voting, which completely supports this coalition endlessly with the supporting through the preferential system. So this will be a titanic shift in the political landscape, and we've actually even seen Clive Palmer in his recent press conference make incredible statement that he basically stated that a lobbyist in Sydney controls the Liberals in Sydney, and his clients are Big Pharma, and basically they're charged with pushing the magic potion. And he actually said he was happy to make a statement to police about this. So this is the level at which the cracks are appearing in the official story, and this is not some kind of uninfluential figure. This is Clive Palmer. So they're quite powerful words coming from him, and he's basically said that the Liberals in Sydney are controlled by this lobbyist. And this goes back to the point I was making earlier, is that the people that you are seeing on TV, the people who you are seeing who are executing these draconian laws, these draconian mandates, they're simply pawns. They're simply instructed to do what they're told to do by these transnational organisations, by these secret societies, by all the other behind the scenes puppeteers, puppet masters that are basically calling the shots, and they're simply doing what they're told. And now we're starting to see it go to the next level, where we're starting to see the lobbyists that are going to be exposed more in 2022. And basically this game is going to a whole new level, because we know that the elite will not back down, but we also know that the global awakening cannot be stopped. And it really can't be. And this is going to be where people will choose what side of history they're on. And if you're watching this, you should know that if you are one of those people who is an agent, or you're working for an organisation that is supporting censorship, that is inhibiting free speech, that is supporting tyranny, you are never on the right side of history. Being in one of those organisations, you are always remembered as the villain. You will always be remembered as the tyrant. You are basically jeopardizing your entire career, the family name, your soul, everything that goes with that, simply for a few trinkets, for a few short-term benefits in this lifetime. And it is such a price. And that's what people seem to fail to understand, is that when you do a deal with the devil, there is always a price. And many people are actually going to be on the wrong side of history, because they're simply unaware that this is a good versus evil conflict, and this has got nothing to do with health or public health orders and all these abuse of powers and abuse of human rights that we're seeing on a daily basis now in Australia. And it's time that we stood together, stood as one, which goes way beyond if you've had the magic potion or not, that we stand as one people and remove this tyranny and pull it out by the root, pull it out once and for all, because now this agenda is no longer covert, it is now overt. And we are seeing a complete lack of leadership here in Australia to right these wrongs, and we really are depending on just a few good politicians, a few good people in public administrative roles, and now, as I said earlier, the elite are now fighting this front with the unions, and this is going to become more and more intensely politically charged. And the art of deception in which the politicians have is, in these situations, what they do is they are extremely devious, and what they tend to do is take a step back to ease the pressure, and then when things dissipate, take 2 steps forward. And it's very important at this point in time the pressure is maintained, because a little leeway here, a little leeway there, they are just simply going to put the agenda forward again when people are becoming relaxed and becoming complacent again. So now we're seeing the various elements of the police force actually standing up against this insanity and some of these public policy measures. Also the nurses, and also now in the courts. My understanding is that this court case tomorrow in the New South Wales Supreme Court is continuing. So it'll be interesting to see the outcome of that. So really what's happened now is that this whole conversation, this whole spectrum of integration of activism has gone way beyond the first round of activists the so-called conspiracy theorists, the kind of tinfoil hat wearers, and all these people who have been proven to be correct again and again and again. And now it's widening into the broader community. And now we're starting to see that there are more and more people who have been affected by this. And this analogy I gave of the ripples in a pond expanding. And people are now taking a stand. And it should be pointed out that this is not going to ever go away, that the people who are waking up to this globalist agenda are going to take a stand and do what's right, because they understand what's at stake. And if you study history, you study the rise of fascism in various countries, it's very difficult to eradicate it once it actually gets its foothold into power. And that's where we are at the moment in Australia. It's a critical moment. But having said that, I made a video recently indicating that I now am of the firm belief that there is enough people who are awake and energized in Australia to oppose this tyranny. Now, of course, it's nothing like 50%, but there are enough people now who are prepared to speak out, who are prepared to take a stand, who are prepared to do what's right in order to restore good government and restore accountability of these politicians, and also to ensure nothing like this ever happens again, to reduce the ability that these administrative unelected bureaucrats have to play politics and make policy for millions of people. And if you're watching this in Australia, you should know that there's millions and millions of people who are in lockdown here in Australia at the moment. And we are in this process, or attempted process, of introducing this segregation. And without going too much into this topic now, this whole political correctness agenda, all these phrases of inclusivity and diversity, it's a total lie. It's a total lie, because when it actually comes to it, what they're trying to do here and various countries around the world is actually create separation, create segregation. It is a form of medical apartheid. So terms like political correctness, inclusivity, diversity, respecting people's personal choices, it's all a total lie. It's just complete social engineering to try to get you to conform, and actually it's a form of self-censorship. And I know that myself and millions of others around the world are not going to stand for this. We are not going to accept the fact that this will be introduced here in Australia. And I know there's people in all the other countries that are awakening, and you can see it everywhere around the world. It's a one-way ticket, the global awakening. And I'm supremely confident now that this energetic change, this shift in consciousness that's happening in Australia, means that they will not succeed, because there are too many people who are committed to a virtuous course of action, and it's very inspiring to see. So at the same time, there's also this complete lack of spiritual leadership we've seen, which I won't mention too much of it in this video, but that's really the deep crisis, that we see so few of these so-called gurus, so-called influencers, so-called spiritual people are actually completely afraid to say anything that opposes the mainstream narrative, whether it's out of fear, whether it's out of fear of being ridiculed, of losing followers, of losing business. It's the same form of consciousness, which is fear. And to make this shift into the fifth dimension consciousnness, you can't do it until you conquer your fear, until you actually move into a state of fearlessness. And for many of these false light messiahs, they're actually being found out. And there's actually an entire chapter in my book on the false light. And we're seeing now that there is a complete lack of spiritual leadership at a global level. And at the same time, because of this shift into the new paradigm, we're actually seeing now a number of spiritual people who are offering various modalities, whether they're yoga teachers, meditation, whatever, who are speaking out about this and who are actually getting engaged in the political process. And this is basically coming from a place of courage, coming ultimately from a place of love. And this is a reflection of the bifurcation of consciousness that's occurring. And this is not supposed to be divisive in any way. but it is a reflection of the fact that people are now choosing their path. And it goes actually way beyond if you've had the magic potion or not. It's more coming from a place of fear or coming from a place of love. And you will not be able to move into the fifth dimension until you confront this in yourself, until you actually address these issues at a very deep soul level and get on the right side of the equation, which is a process, but I'm supremely confident that there will be huge percentages of the population that will migrate to the upper timeline, to the fifth dimensional consciousness as we move through this, but other people will choose not to. And it's not necessarily right or wrong, it's just a choice. But the bifurcation of consciousness is occurring, and we can see it now that many more people are gravitating towards the light. So this lack of spiritual leadership is a real key thing actually, which will shift, it will change, but we're in the process of moving through this chaotic time, which is part of the whole equation. So a lot more things to say, but really that's really all I wanted to say for now. But remember that we will go through very difficult times. Part of the agenda, the mainstream media is deflecting away from the real crisis that's unfolding in the physical world at least, which is the economy, which is going to implode and already is badly. Different sectors of the economy will obviously do better than others, but you're going to find that that basically the boom times are over, which is going to be very difficult for a lot of people, but it's for the greater good and it is for the best as we move into this chaotic period here in Australia. Things will get better, but things are going to get worse in the short term, and we can see now that the tension is really building because of this agenda is now overt. It is overt, and the planners of this diabolical agenda knew at some point that the deception would fade, that it would become clear as to what was occurring. The people would figure it out. But the question that they cannot ever answer in their modelling is, what will the people do when they realise that they are trying to foster on them this tracking, tagging, monitoring, chipping, police state. It's not the government's place to tell people when they can and can't leave their house. Never has been. It's not the government's place to tell people when they can and can't work. Never has been, never will be. It's not the government's place to attempt to track people when they move about their daily life, going to businesses, and to ask people to wear masks in public. This completely sick, twisted, despotic, tyrannical agenda is coming to an end, and it's coming to an end because the people will not stand for it. It will not succeed. It will fail, and we will return to good government in this country. We will return to a free society, and the people that have orchestrated this agenda will be held accountable. It will not continue for that much longer, but it will only end when we say no. It will only end when we stand together and say no. So thanks for watching. I've got plenty more to say. I'll be back. Follow me on Telegram. I'm on Telegram, and stay strong if you're watching this. They are counting on you, on breaking you. This is a spiritual war. It's a spiritual war, and they are counting on you breaking. And if we stand together, we will see the other side of this insanity, and we'll come out stronger, we'll come out better, we'll come out wiser, we'll come out more spiritual. So stay strong. Thanks for watching. We live in epic times.